Does anyone have any questions, announcements, news, gossip, anything they'd like to share with us before we get into the meat of the meeting? Yes, go ahead, Rebecca.
I'd like to just follow up on the discussion about Blue Pole, I think it's called, the one we've just been chatting about, the group in the Netherlands. It turns out the chairman of that is Dieter van Douwen. I haven't got his name there, but he's the chair, the guy that spoke at the Cambridge seminar at the end. I thought the chair was Ian Dunlop from Australia, but Ian Dunlop is a board member and the chair of it is Dieter. So that might not mean much to a
That's
few people.
Wouter van Deren.
But Wouter, sorry, yeah, Wouter. But the point is that he is the chair and he spoke at Cambridge. So I just wanted to inject that here because we're having a strategic discussion today.
Thank you for Rebecca. I think that those of us looking at the links between the various players in this find it's a very small world. Lots of interconnections, maybe too many. We see the same names in the same groups. Other comments from folks? Questions that anybody has? Okay, I just want to just say a couple things. I think most of you probably have picked up over the last few weeks the increasing levels of alarm that's occurring as a result of a few things happening at once. One being the dramatic, I think that's not too strong a word, dramatic increase in average ocean temperatures, well beyond what has been seen before for this time of year. The official start of El Nino and all that implies. We don't know, of course, if it'll be a strong one or a weak El Nino, but if you add that, and even if you saw the Guardian article that in the first few days of this month, the world basically passed 1.5 C on a number of consecutive days, which was pointed out in the article, may have been the first time ever in history that has happened. So none of this is good news, obviously. It's not anything to celebrate, but it is, if anything, should help, if that's the right word, get the message that emission reductions alone is not going to do the job. Some of this should. I hope we're all preparing for what could be a very rough few months in terms of climate all over the world. Other than that, but interestingly, there's still some debate, at least in the North Atlantic, as to the cause of the high ocean temperatures. And Michael Mann has suggested, I thought a very intriguing suggestion I had never heard of before, that it may be because the amount of Saharan sand blowing over the ocean has significantly decreased from past years, and the sand acts, not surprisingly, to cool. So a form of natural geoengineering. But I guess time will tell, and the scientists will have at it over the next months and years to sort out what the causes are of all of this. Okay, basically what we want to do today is to bring us up to date on where we are with the Climate Overshoot Commission and preparations for the COP28, and to continue the discussion that we started last week, or last meeting rather, 2 weeks ago, in terms of some of the ideas and energy that Paul Zeitz and Arya are bringing to us with respect to sort of a long-term strategy and approach for HPAC. So that's sort of the overall agenda for today. I'm going to turn it over to Paul in a minute. I'd just like to give a couple minute sort of background on the Overshoot Commission. If you're not familiar with them, they were set up by the Paris Peace Forum, which is a French, not surprisingly, a French NGO headed by the former head of the World Trade Organization, Pascal Lamy, and to basically, as an independent, non-attached, non-ideological entity, with the goal of basically figuring out how the world could avoid, minimize, manage overshooting 1.5 degrees C. And we were fortunate enough, I think we can thank Robert for this, Robert Tulip, to have gotten Jesse Reynolds, their executive director, to speak to us last fall. I think it was in September. At the very beginning of their deliberations, they've got sort of mostly former heads of state and former foreign ministers. In other words, the elite of the elite, the political elite of the political elite from every continent, with the idea that that would give them a degree of independence to make recommendations that might otherwise not be made if they had to get the approval of their home governments. And they plan on issuing their final or their report. They haven't issued any report, their report in mid-September, with the expectation and the goal, I think, of influencing what happens at the COP in December of this year. So with that, we sort of thought maybe we would send them some comments and try to influence what's in the report. So it's even hard to sort of track down who they are, but I was able to connect with a couple of their staff people on LinkedIn and wrote to them, and basically, and before, let me just say, and before that, I mean, in looking at everything they've written and said on their website and elsewhere, I mean, they indicated no opportunity for any member of the public to give input into their efforts, except those members of the public that they choose to meet with. And they've been meeting, you know, sort of in major cities around the world every couple of months, and then they issue sort of reports and newsletters and photos of them shaking hands with the elites in various countries and many youth. So when I wrote to them, it wasn't with the expectation that they would say, "Oh, this is great. We're really eager to what you have to say, HPAC." But in fact, they basically said, "Don't bother sending us anything because we have no, no capacity and no." They didn't say no interest, but essentially they were saying we have no interest in hearing from anybody except for the folks that we reached out to. So with that, we talked at our steering circle meeting the other day about basically putting something together that we could send out once their report is released in rapid response to their report. So that's sort of where we are with the Overshoot Commission. And I think what I will do is turn it over to Paul to pick up on that.
Herb, sorry, this is Ron Bayman. I'm just letting you know I'm in the car, and that's why I've been very quiet. So my mute is off, but someone else has got to take notes on this and stuff. Anyway, just
Okay.
hello to everybody, and I'm here.
Oh, by the way, I'm sorry, before Paul, I do see Sev's hand up. Did you have something you wanted to say before we turn it over to Paul?
I did, Herb. Regarding your Saharan sand observation, there will be two effects on albedo. The airborne sand itself would reflect sunlight for about 3 days while the sand was in the air, but the phytoplankton nutriated by that same dust would reflect for about 3 weeks, the extra sunlight.
Oh, okay. Thanks. It sounds like you're one of the world's few experts on Saharan sand and its impacts on the climate. Appreciate that. And Rebecca, did you have something else you'd like to say or ask?
Yes, it's about framing what we're doing this morning. And Herb, what I think is, I'm saying it now because what we're aiming to do influences how we, not the discussion, but how we write it up. I think Overshoot Commission has said don't bother speaking to us because otherwise they get every community group writing to them. If we want to say something to them now, then I think we should say it now, and we can get one of our networks like David Spratt or whoever it is that we choose to send it to them. Plus, I think the same succinct document, for example, problem statement, the things you said at the beginning of the meeting, solution, ERO is not enough, we need cooling, and then we need testing. Whatever our short statement is, we can send that to a number of groups now and influence both public debate and journalism, plus directly speak to the Overshoot Commission. And I just wanted to say that before we get going, because I think probably they don't want to hear from all and sundry, just because otherwise they get 5,000 emails.
Okay, thanks for that. In fact, I think what Paul is going to do is to lead a discussion on just what you're talking about. How do we best approach entities like Overshoot and others? So I think you provided some initial input into that. Any other comments? If not, turn it over to Paul.
Yeah, I think I'm actually turning it over to Suzanne to kick us off for this segment, right? Or you want me to just go, Suzanne? It's up to you. Okay, yeah. So hi, everyone. Happy, what day of the week is it? Thursday or Friday for some of you. Happy Friday. Thank you to the steering group of HPAC for inviting us to this session today. I put an agenda up that Herb had asked us to develop. So if you want to click on that link, it should open up for everyone. Oh, it's not. Let me just, is it working? I want to make sure I have it open for everyone to be able to see, share.
It wasn't open earlier. It was saying Google and I didn't have access.
Anyone with the link should, okay, sorry, my bad. It's all fixed now. So we had, we've already completed the opening, and now I'm going to enter the, the main part of the agenda, which is an introduction of what we're calling Unify for Climate Action. And we have had multiple conversations with the HPAC steering committee, and Unify, which is a new movement building platform, which I'm involved in initiating. And we come together to create what we're calling Unify for Climate Action. And Suzanne, Arieh, and I have created a small group called Climate Unify Pod. And we're trying to bring together our advocacy, communications, and policy expertise and movement building expertise to create this moving forward on an action plan that we're going to present and discuss today with all of you. So I'm going to ask if, can I share my screen? I think I can. Robert, is that going to be allowable? I'll try it. No.
Just a sec while I just create the permission.
So I'm going to click on the first pre-reading document in the agenda, which is the Unify for Climate Action Plan. And I'm just going to give a quick overview of it. And then we're going to spend the rest of the meeting systematically going through it and with facilitation by myself and then Suzanne and then Arieh. So it's still not enabling me to.
Yeah, you're right now. Sorry,
Oh.
just took a while to work through all of the buttons I had to push.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Robert. And thanks for all you do. So this is the draft document. If you want to click on the links for HPAC at the top, that's our website. And then Unify, also our website went live yesterday. I'll put the link up in the chat in a second. But basically, we've divided up the action plan into 3 tracks. One is rapid action now. And as Herb said, that's focused on the Overshoot Commission. So I'll just make that clear right there. And then we're going to get into this in a minute, so I'm not going to go into the details right now. Then we're proposing track 2 to be focused on COP28, which is coming up pretty quickly. We're going to start working on that now, and then take that all the way through the COP and into December of this year. And then I think an important part of our plan is track 3, which is to develop a Unify for Climate Action campaign that we are kind of starting now, but we'll go all the way through next year. So the idea that we have is that the stuff that we're doing now is building our capacity, building our relationships, building trust, and then moving into public advocacy and campaigning and building power as we do that, building our movement as we do that. So that's the overall approach that we're going to go into more detail on each of these 3 tracks. We are also organizing ourselves as a kind of managing ourselves. And this, for the implementation, I just want to say this is a big invitation to all of you. We are creating pathways of engagement for your active engagement in advocacy, campaigning, and movement building. We're using a management approach. We're seeking a leader-full movement or a movement full of leaders. And we're using to manage all this, we're using a MOCA management approach, which is described here in the document. And we identify for each work stream, if you will, the Overshoot Commission, and then there are, we want to develop policy recommendations. So that's a track. We want to do targeting of our outreach to the Overshoot Commission. That's a track. Then we want to do communications with the Overshoot Commission. That's a track. So the MOCA assigns responsibilities to people, and we're happy to invite you all into any of this that you want to be part of. And then you can expand these or collapse them. So we just started looking at track 2 on COP28. COP is in Dubai, end of November, early December. And then track 3, the campaign design and action plan. So we're trying to organize ourselves for action and manage ourselves accordingly. And then the overview of the MOCA methodology is described in page 4 of this. I'm not going to go through that now, but I do want you to be aware that it's there if you want to look at it in more detail. I think it was important. We wanted to share that with you so that we want you to know that we're also reaching out to build our team. And we're looking at bringing on interns to volunteer with us. If you know anyone that wants to have a purpose in life, we have a purpose opportunity to help us, do what we want to, the agenda that you're all setting. We are also, and Aryeh will talk more about this, we're building partnerships with communications experts and communications firms and trying to, move forward with those ideas as well. So the pre-reads are in the agenda document, Brian. Just, you might have come on after I posted the agenda. Let me do that again.
No agenda document, sorry.
Do you have it? Here, I'll put it up again in the chat.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I don't have it.
Yeah. So if it's okay, I'm just going to move into track 3 because we're kind of behind time a little bit. I mean, track 1, right? So let me pause and ask if there's any overall questions about the overall 3 tracks or the general way that we're thinking about this work. And now we really want to have 3 short presentations and then discussions, get feedback from all of you on each of the 3 tracks. So I'm going to pause and see if there's any kind of burning questions or thoughts people want to share at this point. Leslie.
Yeah, you can count on me for questions. I'm
Yay.
wondering if you're thinking of partnering with big credible organizations like AGU or American Meteorological Society or things like that, because they have great concerns. AGU at least has got pretty activist leadership, trying to have all the scientific work that their members do go towards actually making a difference. It might be cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're totally open. So if you want to do an introduction to me and Suzanne and Aryeh to a contact over there, we're happy to explore that. So
Great.
we welcome that. And yeah, if AGU, we're in startup mode basically, so we don't have the capacity of AGU. So if they want to get involved in designing a campaign, then they can be an effector arm and a partner for sure. Yeah. And WMO too. Yeah. I mean, I just,
Let me add, that there's a number of documents that we have developed as drafts to fuel this effort that we're describing today. Among them are the media list, the influential key target audiences, and what we call our list of allies. And that's any organization that has expressed at least at a minimum support for more research on geoengineering, and has come to terms with the fact that emissions reduction alone is not going to do the trick. So AGU is on that list, as well as the Meteorological Association, in addition to any other organization that I found and that we've cited in our vision document as sort of agreeing with this conceptually with what we're proposing. And more recently, we actually added the Sierra Club to that list, as the Sierra Club has also adopted a policy in a policy document that 1.5 is too high and that the target should be 1 degree. So anybody that has anyone that they want to add to that list, just send it to one of us and it will be incorporated.
Okay, I threw this into the chat for AGU, but I'm glad they're already
Yeah.
on.
I mean, I think we want to track those things, as Suzanne said, but I would also go a step and say, like Leslie, we're ready to go. We're in action mode now. So we're ready for introductions. We're ready to establish those, we have a vehicle now that can, that we can co-create with people to, make something happen. Yeah. So great. Thank you for that. And again, that's an open door over here on the campaign side. So I think we can bridge now to the track one, which Herb already kind of introduced. We have spent some time, I'm going to share my screen again, kind of thinking this through a little bit in more detail with the steering group. And I'm just going to quickly review these 7 points here and then open it up for some discussion and feedback. So, well, we're doing number 1 right now. So this is like, I'm going to put done, yay for us. We're getting something done. We're presenting the steering circle and unifier presenting this to HPAC general meeting. So the next step is that we are going to take our existing consensus documents, which include the HPAC vision and the case for direct cooling. And the idea is to develop a set of specific recommendations for the Overshoot Commission in kind of a policy recommendation kind of format that is like what policymakers will read. So it has to be short. It's like 2, 3, maybe 4 pages max, So it'll be a fun journey to work with all of you and other experts to kind of synthesize things down. And, if the process is working, we'll be fighting over real estate in a short document, because it's like if you write a 10-pager, no one will read it, So the idea is to really get pithy, sharp, smart recommendations for the Overshoot Commission. So that's a process that we're going to start operationalizing after this meeting. Then we are, as Herb mentioned, the Overshoot Commission is preparing its report, which will expected to be released in September, is the latest we've heard. And so Herb is going to do outreach to Jesse Reynolds, the Overshoot Commission Executive Director, to discuss the report at a general meeting upon the report's release, is the plan. Then, once the report is out, we are going to prepare ourselves for a rapid review and a rapid response with our HPAC response, based on our recommendations, and then the idea would be to share our response with the Overshoot Commission and with Prague and other networks like NOAC, HCA, HCI, others, like AGU, WMO, others, and ask them to endorse a set of comments or recommendations or for them to submit their own comments to the Overshoot Commission. And then the plan is that we will be using our newly forming communications capacities, and we'll talk more about this. We are talking with Redwood Climate Communications. We're talking with other pro bono media support groups to prepare for, a media strategy, a media communication strategy with our response to the Overshoot Commission report. So that could include a press release. It could include op-eds. It could include local op-eds. It could include a social media plan. We're not going to get into all the tactics on this call, but we have communications experts in our posse, and we're just going to work on it and be ready to go once that report comes out. So that's basically the idea now, and this work that we're going to do to develop our recommendations and to develop the agenda that we want to see being put forward through the Overshoot Commission. In our minds, I'll let Suzanne and Aria speak for themselves, but we're thinking that kind of policy work, that policy analysis work, that agenda setting work will be our agenda going right into COP28. So we're not going to have to recreate the wheel. We're setting this up so it's teeing up our policy agenda for COP28 as well. And I'm going to pause on discussing track 2 and now open it up for feedback and discussion. I do want to note Rebecca's comment is something that, I think what you're saying is that we should give our comments and recommendations to the Overshoot Commission, even if they're not asking for them. So that is something that has been discussed behind the scenes. So I just want to acknowledge that we hear you. That is, I mean, everyone independently can do that, right? The emails are on the website of the Overshoot Commission. If you go in to the staff, they have all their emails up there. So, I mean, you can email them. It's not like a closed gate. But I think from our side, HPAC didn't feel ready to send something out immediately right now, and decided to position into a post-report response. But I don't think that should stop you, Rebecca, from doing that, All right, I'm stopping. Any questions, comments, feedback, considerations on track 1, the Overshoot Commission? Over to you, Brian.
Is there a clear pathway to a meeting, an audience, a session with the executive director of Overshoot Commission?
Thanks, Brian. In the action plan, the plan is for Herb to reach out to Jesse Reynolds and to schedule that. I guess sometime in September after the report's out. Now, it's possible, Herb, you might ask them to say if they want to give us an advance copy, or I mean, if they want to get positive media, then they might want to do a pre-meeting with us in August. I don't know, or maybe they're too scared to do that. I don't know how they're operating. But yeah, Brian, did that answer your question?
Not completely. I'm just trying to see if there's any indication that that particular communication channel is open.
Well, let me just say, if I could, a couple things. First, if someone has a better contact or close contact with Jesse, maybe they should be the one to reach out. I mean, clearly he knows us because he spoke at our group, so we don't have to introduce who we are. But I think that's an open question, the best way to approach him. And we were in the email that I got, I'm looking for it now, it may take me a minute to find it. The email we got from their external relations manager, or some similar name, he basically invited us to support their report and their efforts and work with them as they put together the report. And I responded and I said, we'd be happy to, as long as the report is consistent with, what our views are. So, so clearly, that was sort of an invitation to us.
That's encouraging. I'm a little confused by their not being interested in having any input from HPAC. How do you reconcile those two situations?
Well, they're not looking for any input from anyone on the substance of what's in the report. But basically, as was said earlier, they decided for whatever reason to limit their connections to those that they select themselves. But essentially, they'd like our support of what they come up with and to sort of work with them. And I'll dig out the email while this is going on and post it or read the exact sentence or two that he read. But hopefully that gives some further clarification, Brian.
Okay, that sounds like there's a dialogue. Thank you.
If I could just pipe in here, it's Ron Bayman. Suzanne had fished out a media post indicating that they got hammered by a group who had actually been able to contact some of their designated, people, representatives that they talked to, and they, I think Brian, you were party to those emails, but so they've been apparently facing some pushback from the anti-geoengineering camp. And so just, so we want to sort of, I think our strategy is to sort of let them have, we don't want to be adding to the, I don't know, I don't want to speak for the group, but just the background in terms of anybody that reaches out to them, just know that I think they may be feeling sort of under siege a bit, because that's the side they've heard from, the most vociferous side. And, so we need to sort of figure out our strategy in that context.
Yeah, so thanks, Ron and Herb, for your updates. And I want to just note that Robert Tulip put up in the chat the article that Ron is referring to, which is a kind of back end on what's happening with the Overshoot Commission. I think it's an important article because it also showed that there are some champions for what we're advocating for within the Overshoot Commission. So one idea that I have is that we could, like, I think it's Pascal Lamy and a couple others who are wanting to keep the space open. We should maybe contact them and help them build support for their position. So I don't know whether we have the capacity to do that before, or we'll wait till the recommendations are out. I mean, in an ideal world, Rebecca, you're asking strategically, if we have our document ready, it would be good to send it, but we don't. We have our vision and our direct cooling paper, so we could send those to them. Although I don't think that's the best format, and it's not completely up to date. And we didn't really think we had the bandwidth to do that any quicker than by August, I guess. So that's where that is. And I'm gonna let go. We have like 4 hands up, so I'm gonna go Jonathan, Rebecca, Leslie, and Herb, and then we're gonna move on to track 2. Over to you,
Great.
Jonathan.
Thanks. Yeah, Paul, I just looked over your Unify website and it's really beautiful. Thanks so much for putting that up.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to suggest a new category and ask if this category has already been activated. And that is that we support lawsuits that are being brought by either young people for the next generation or other groups that are specifically targeted to force governments, either states or countries, to take better action. Because I think the kind of documents we create are concise and scientifically based and could support those lawsuits. Has this category been opened up, Paul, by any of your other Unify activities?
No, not yet. So I think what we can do is create a bucket in our, we can create like other ideas and start collecting those. And as this kind of develops further and we start, we have to demonstrate that we can actually get this off the ground, which I'm sure we can. But I think that's, there will be a lot of opportunities like the one you're talking about. So I think we should, if you have any specific information that you want to send us, and we can put that into a category of to be explored as we move forward in our campaign action plan.
Okay, great. We'll do it.
Okay, Rebecca?
Yes, I've just got a few things. One is, I don't think it's very respectful to send something as an individual, and I'm not going to do that because it's not a good use of my time. But also, I think it sounds like I'm a Fruit Loop, or, it just doesn't sound very coordinated if I'm saying, here's something and it's not being sent by HPAC as an organisation. The second thing is, I think we should not assume that anyone knows who HPAC is or what it stands for, even if they are. For example, when David Keith came, he seemed to have no idea who actually we are. People don't necessarily read our website beforehand, and they have an idea that HPAC is on about X, Y, Z, but they don't know the nuances of who we are. So I'm just saying that about, Jesse Reynolds spoke with us to our organisation, but he hasn't necessarily had the time to keep up on exactly the nuances of what HPAC is or what it does. And the last thing is the concept from economics of the multi-period game. It doesn't really matter if we don't get any kind of submission to the Overshoot Commission before they publish their report. My opinion is it would be good to send something via a strategic channel to influence what they're saying. However, if that is not possible, then it doesn't matter. This discussion is going on and on. But I'm simply saying if we can do that, I do think it would be good.
Thanks, Rebecca. I hear you. So we will consider that and consider modifying our action plan. if we can generate a set of recommendations earlier, then that would be a option. Herb?
Yeah, I just want to take 30 seconds to read the last part of the response I received. The first paragraph essentially said, we have no process to accept any of your comments. And then he says, nevertheless, we would be delighted to engage in our next phase following the publication of the report in mid-September, and would be open to receive your support through op-eds or media interventions in support of the commissioner's contribution to the debate on climate overshoot in mid-September, as we are keen on having as many voices supporting the recommendations of the commissioners as possible. Please let me know if this is of interest to you, as we can therefore share with you in a couple months some information on the report's contents. So just so everybody knows, and I have not responded yet to that email from a week or so ago.
Okay, thanks, Herb. Leslie?
Yeah, trying to access Jesse Reynolds. I think I have this memory correct, that NCAR, giant US laboratory, does a lot of climate modeling, sponsors the CCIS seminar series. Some of you have attended, I'm sure. And so Community Climate Intervention Strategies seminar that goes on. And I think they've had Jesse there a few times, Jesse Reynolds. And that means that they probably have a good relationship with him, and they may get what we're talking about. I mean, CCIS certainly knows what I work on. They like the idea of climate interventions that are responsible in general. Do you want me to try to see whether they could broker our getting inputs to Jesse Reynolds? Specifically, I'd probably try Simone Tilmas, who helps organize it. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I just said, that sounds like a good idea to me. I mean, I would support that.
Okay, I'll give it a shot. Yeah, and then Peter Lawrence is the other one. I tried both of them, see if I can reach. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Leslie. I think, I think my experience in advocacy is like, this is where I think we can use our vision and our direct cooling paper as like inputs right now. Those are public, those are linked in our document here. And, you can, use that as a way of opening up a conversation. And yeah, HPAC exists. We are developing a specific response to the Overshoot Commission. Based on Herb's email, I mean, I would recommend that our position is, we don't know if we can support your recommendations because we don't know what they are, So we're happy to be briefed, and then we're going to develop a response. That's our current plan, So we want them to, if they want us to support whatever they're saying, then we need to have more of an engagement, I guess. Thanks, Jonathan, for all the links up in your document. So if folks want to engage further on the Overshoot Commission, please feel free to reach out, and we'll be keeping you all posted on our progress over the next couple months and as we go forward with track 1. So now I'm going to pass the baton over to Suzanne, who's going to lead and facilitate a track 2, the COP28 discussion.
Well, one last comment, just that I would encourage us to get a draft over to Overshoot, given everything that's been discussed here ahead of time, because they could hopefully copy a lot of what we're suggesting into their document. So I would encourage that over the next month.
Thanks, Brian. I hear you on that. I agree. So we're going to work on that. We're going to see what we can pull together, and we have those existing documents if anyone has contact. But I agree with Rebecca's point. I want to just echo something she said, and then I'll stop talking, which is that going alone is not what we're proposing. We're proposing to go in with a group of organizations, a group of climate experts like you all, and we want to open the sign-on of whatever we're recommending to a larger group, all those other networks. So that'll give us more power, rather than the go it alone approach. So thank you, Rebecca, for making that point so eloquently. All right, over to you, Suzanne.
Thank you. I want to start by saying the outcome I'd like to have from this discussion is that anybody here who's willing will sign up to be on the COP28 action team, which is to develop our strategy and specific tactics for having some kind of a voice expressed at COP28. All of the documents that we discussed in track 1, the development of our recommendations and our outreach to partners, would feed into that strategy. So we've already got a starting leap in this direction, and so I'm looking for volunteers. So, but right now I'm just going to go through the information that we have about COP28 and what the layout is going to be. I know some of you have been past attendees, so you're very familiar with this, but just to set a time frame and a layout, this document will be distributed to you post today's meeting, along with a summary of some of our outcomes, of the outcomes of the meeting overall. So I'm just going to run through it quickly. And the first is that the dates are November 30th through December 20, through December 12th. That will set our deadline for getting our act together, having our act together. Somewhat controversially, the head of COP28 this year is Ahmad Al-Jaber, who's closely allied with the oil industry there, which has caused some controversy. And thanks to Mike McCracken, we've gotten a little bit more insight to the difficulties that they're actually having setting an agenda, given implications of a fossil fuel supportive influence affecting both the agenda and the outcomes of COP28. The expected participation is 70,000, which is a lot of people milling around in one place. I've never been to one of these, but it must be astounding. And that includes state government officials, industry leaders, academics, and representatives from civil society organizations, as they call the public. And what information we have thus far assembled to assist us in targeting is we have the contact information for the chairs and coordinators of regional groups and other constituencies. And these are really the ones that are coordinating among the parties, and the parties are divided into several categories, depending on whether the developing countries and where they're located and that kind of thing. So these are all live links that you'll be getting so you can see that. So we have their contact information in the form of emails. We do not have a list of all the delegates yet. Not all of the countries and states have designated them, but this is the list we have that's active on the COP28 website right now. And we also have information on more detailed information on the regional groups of member states, the United States list of least developed countries, and the United Nations list of small island developing countries, all of which are target audiences for us. The list of admitted NGOs is now available at this link, and including emails, and it's divided by country, and the names of the organization and the person representing them are available. This is something that I'll circle back to as an opportunity for us, perhaps, because we are not, HVAC itself is not a nonprofit organization, a certified nonprofit organization. We haven't filed any paperwork, and in order to apply as an NGO, one has to have been one for a year. So we are not. So the best we can do is to tag team with an organization that's already intended to participate. We did this in COP26 because Leslie Field had been successful in getting a spot in the green zone. And so we were able to be represented there with some of our materials, and it was at least an entree to have a voice at that point in time. The IGOs are the intergovernmental organizations, and we also have that list. And for anyone who has connections within those lists. It's another opportunity to find out what they have planned and whether climate cooling will be on their agenda of events and information that they intend to pass out or try to engage participants in COP26-8, including the delegates in conversation about. So I've put here the blue zone and the green zone description. The blue zone is for the parties and observers, media, and world leaders attend there. There's a limitation on the number of exhibits, et cetera, that can be had. And it's an application and approval process. The green zone is also an application and a approval process where folks can set up their pavilions, as they're called. And that's the area where we were able to have a presence by tag teaming with another organization. And there is an opportunity in these zones to hold press conferences. In the blue zones, they're limited to certified participants. But in the green zone, it's a little bit more accessible to have your own press conference or own little event. Again, they're subject to application and approval. And the emphasis that this COP is putting on those kinds of events is that they should prioritize inclusivity, amplifying voices of those impacted by climate change, and that they have gender parity and include youth voice. So they have some guidelines. And then Mike McCracken has cautioned us in terms of this disputes that are taking place within the bond talks that are setting the agenda for COP28, and that we be wary and aware of what's happening there as we cast our own position statements for possible distribution and a foundation of outreach at COP28. That's all I have to say. And I'd love to take volunteers for participating in the development of the COP28 action plan to strategize for our involvement. Any takers? We also want to know if any of you are planning to attend or affiliated with any organization that's planning to attend or have connections to any organization that is certified for attendance. Barbara Sneed.
I just wrote in the chat, Yay Tao will be there, we hope. He has been sponsored for the previous 2 COPs by Facing Future, and I reminded him that he should contact them and make sure that they would sponsor him again. But I assume that he will be there. So at the very least, he will be able to hand out literature from HPAC.
Super, thank you. And Herb, you have your hand up?
Yes, I booked hotels for the last 2 COPs and then canceled them at the last minute when I was too chicken to go. But what's interesting is those of you who are maybe thinking of going, when I booked the hotel in Glasgow, it was about $90. And when I canceled it, it was $600. And I actually just booked a hotel in Dubai for this one. I think Dubai is where it's being held. I hope I booked it in the right city for a little less than $100 a night. So if you're even thinking with free cancellation, so even if you're even thinking of going, now would be the time to book your accommodations. I mean, it would certainly be, I would be much more inclined to go if there was a way I could represent HPAC, you know, in the, well, I guess it's the blue rather than the green. I did attend the Paris and Madrid, but in the sort of the green zone, which was still extremely productive and interesting, meeting lots of people, going to lots of workshops. But so I'm happy to help out with our planning for this effort.
Super, Leslie.
I got a note not so long ago that AGU was planning attendance at COP, and they were looking to understand whether there were other organizations, and I wasn't sure whether they were trying to offer other organizations a ride, or some sort of help in getting accepted, or whether they were seeking it for themselves. But what would your ask be while I'm contacting AGU leadership about the other?
Well, that's part of the action plan, but since we're looking at a tiered process here, we're looking at the OC recommendations as being the heart of the message that we want to deliver at COP. Hopefully we'll be joined in that message by other partner organizations via the Unify group. And so we would be looking for outlets to deliver those messages. And it could be, from a tactical point of view, it could be, are you going to have a press conference, or is it aligned with the position and the messaging that we've taken? Is it possible to create, say, a short video that can run on loop at your table, at your pavilion? So that it's sort of to be determined, but we're building from the set of recommendations that we plan to develop for the OC.
Okay. You're not trying to get a certain number of people from HPAC to try to go. You're trying to get the message there as part of an aligned.
Right. We're looking for conduits of our message and channels, communication. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay. Paul, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Suzanne. That was really helpful. I think this will be part of the working group to sort this out a bit, but I do think we, like you said, we're going to have these recommendations. We're going to have hopefully a comms messaging strategy to go along with that. So maybe we should be focusing on, media and communications tactics and approaches to get our message heard. And I do think the media loves a controversy, right? So we can create that, if depending on the voice and the voices of HPAC and how we want to present our voice of, in collaboration with others, how do we when I've gone to these international conferences, these UN things and whatever, I spend all my time in the media center, and I just try to get, contact to media so that the media covers our view, and then that gives us power, or that gives us political power. So I just want to ask everyone to think about, journalists, or, maybe I've seen people register as journalists, we could create something called the Justice News Network, and, we could try to get media credentialed so that you could get into the media center. There's ways of, penetrating the media side of this. And then also, if there's partners like the ones that we've been talking about that could co-host a press conference in the press center, that's another way of getting media. So, I mean, the talk festing and the green and blues, I mean, all that is great. It's learning and networking and connecting, and that's important to do. And if we want to have an impact, we might want to think about a focused media strategy. Anyway, food for thought.
Thank you. Mike.
I just wanted to come back a bit to that sort of comment that I had inserted there, that basically what it said was that, it's becoming easier for countries to think about a geoengineered world than to work out their issue on mitigation or something. But isn't the main topic at this COP to be the stock take about where all the countries are? And they're going to be sort of hounding and pushing on countries to try and get as much mitigation as possible. And I think it's going to be an interesting challenge to figure out how to put a message together that sort of fits in with what they're saying. I mean, we're basically, would they be saying, great, do as much as you can, and everything, but, and then advocating something in addition. And I think it's going to be a challenge and probably something different than what we say to the Overshoot Commission about it. We're going to have to figure out how to frame that in some way.
My response to that is that what we need to sort of deliberate over as an organization, and this goes to the issue of whether we send OC recommendations or not. It's how contrary do we want to be to the agenda that other people are pursuing? And so, you know, I always call it the therefore. So if the focus of COP28 is how much emissions reduction can we get, or what do we need in order to promote more, is the other message is no matter how much you get, unless you stop fossil fuels altogether, it's not going to be enough. And therefore, you need to introduce this other element into your overall strategy. So, you know, it's, you know, we can't go along to get along forever, or we're not going to get the message out. Is sort of where I stand on this. I'm not speaking for HVAC. I'm just speaking on, this is my point of view.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And I sort of put in the chat that you've made an important point on the Overshoot Commission discussion, that we're worried about overshoot of 1 degree, not 1.5 degrees.
That's right.
And so, but I think it's going to be a challenge, because I think people are going to say, oh, geoengineering, that lets us not have to work so hard on mitigation. And we don't want to be saying that. And everything. We're all for it. So we'll just have to think about how to.
Right. Well, and we never have. We've always said you need them all. And you need them all as much as.
Yeah, no, I know we've said it. I'm just thinking, how do you figure out what the key sentence or two is that you start a press release with, or something like that? You know,
want to be
which could be
on our committee, Mike?
Well, I'm willing to try and help. Yeah, I mean, so which I think is, we're already overshooting, you know, I mean, we're already too high. So you have to have not just emissions cutbacks, but also.
Exactly.
More,
yeah. So I'll put you down for the action plan committee. Thanks. Robert, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sympathetic to the points that Mike is just making. I mean, I have very mixed feelings about the whole IPCC COP28 COP process, but that's for another time. We need to do what we can do, and we need to be in the room, I suppose. But what I was going to say simply was that my expectation is that Sean Fitzgerald and Hugh Hunt from Cambridge will probably be going to the COP this year. They certainly went last year to Sharm el-Sheikh, and I think they're planning to go again this year. So whether or not something could be worked out with them, I don't know. I don't know any details about what their plans are, or even if it's definite, or whether which zone they've got they'll be going to, or under whose umbrella they go, whether it's their own or somebody else's. But obviously, we do have contacts with them, and it may well be at the right time useful to speak to them about that.
Good point. They're also on our list of allies, so
yeah.
Someone will be connecting with sooner rather than later. Mike, did you have a follow-up? You're muted, hon.
I was just going to finish off.
That in past years, the Climate Institute has been an accredited organization and has also helped have some people come with it as well. I haven't been following closely if they're doing it again, but they might, because they coordinate an effort among island nations. So you might check on your list if Climate Institute is on there.
Do you have a connection with them, Mike?
Yeah, I'm nominally their chief scientist, but I haven't been active in the sort of been active in their sort of rethinking and reorganizing after their chair passed away. But yeah, yes.
Okay, super.
But can I just to finish off the point I was going to make? I think that the point that Mike is making about the way that we frame this planetary cooling case in a forum like the COP needs very, very careful consideration, because there are a lot of forces ranged against this right across the piece. And my very strongly held view is that until people have grasped the first point, which is that emissions reductions alone will not work, It isn't sufficient. And actually, I'd correct something you said, Suzanne, because you said that, unless we got all our emissions eliminated tomorrow, actually, even if we had all our emissions eliminated to zero tomorrow, it still wouldn't be enough to keep the temperature rise within levels that are safe. So I don't think there's any scenario now in which emissions reductions alone, even accompanied by some greenhouse gas removal, are going to do what needs to be done. And until that message has kind of sunk in, I think we are always going to meet huge resistance, because this moral hazard argument that keeps coming up just seems to have a life of its own, and it's a kind of an easy option. And because people love hating the oil and gas sector, it's a kind of nice, easy one to hit them with. But actually, people have got to somehow we've got to get people to step back and first understand that emissions reductions alone, even at the most extreme level, the most implausible level, is not going to be enough. And until we get that across, we have a problem. So I just put that down, that as you are planning this, that really needs to be right top of the agenda, in my view.
Great.
Robert?
Yeah, Steph, what's next?
Yeah, looking at how badly the bond talks are going at the moment, which are preparing for the COP28, COP28 is riding for a fall. Our work, our ideas could give them a way out of absolute failure. So we could be the straw they'd be grabbing at the end of the conference when they've got no agreement on finance or whatever, and everything is in disarray. We could be the way out, and we could maybe try and put our submissions and with the groups we're going in with in such a framework.
Yes, it would be great if we could position it that way and get some other support around that approach. Rebecca, you had a comment. Thank you, Seb.
Hi, Suzanne. I'm just letting you know that I'm not putting up my hand to help with this, because there's a small parallel group working on developing up the proposals ready for investment. And it's not secret, it's the same people who are all on this call and whoever else. But what I'm saying is that Cambridge, Hugh Hunt has offered to be in a coordinating role there, and that is a separate exercise to make sure that, so what I'm really doing here is saying left and right hands can be coordinated, and everyone here can know that other exercise is happening. Plus, we have done a one-page cover sheet on what we want for investment proposals, why we're doing it for SRM, which I'm happy to send to whoever is the right person here, so that it's the same overall message. And like, I will chip in here and help, but I'm just saying I'm not going to be on the team that's actively doing it.
So can you put a little of that information in the chat, Rebecca, so I know exactly who is working on what and the object of it?
I'll put the objective in, and I'll put in what Cambridge is offered to do, even though what has happened in the last NOAC meeting. Hugh Hunt said, I like the idea of coordinating. I mean, I'll put all this in the chat, but basically it's not a secret, but I'm just saying it's a separate activity and we shouldn't get our wires crossed.
I totally agree. Thank you for the information. Leslie.
I wanted to get back to Robert Chris. Robert, this was a comment that I was tempted to make earlier, but I don't recall seeing a peer-reviewed paper or such that makes that point, that even if we stopped all greenhouse gas emissions now, we're cooked if we don't make interventions. This would be so powerful in the kinds of messaging I need to make as well for my own, work on ice preservation. If you or anybody here has some really powerful article to point to, I would so be grateful about that.
Well, I think that James Hansen's warming in the pipeline basically says that. It is not released yet because he doesn't want to have any publicity before the peer-reviewed paper comes out. I don't know when the timing will be. as soon as that is peer reviewed, then you can cite that paper. It is compelling evidence.
There's a second side to the point, Leslie, which is that cutting all emissions immediately is obviously impossible. But then even the calls from the IPCC, for example, to halve emissions by 2030 is just absurd. And I think the most prominent recent commentary on that is Vaclav Smil's book, How the World Really Works. While it doesn't recognize that climate change is an existential problem, it explains exactly why cutting emissions is just so very difficult. So it's remains a useful source.
And I guess I'd add, Leslie, that what our view is we're already too hot.
Yes.
You know, we're basically if you want to be less than 1, and I don't know any nation that wants further warming and further exacerbation of extreme events. Maybe somebody does, but I don't. I mean, I've heard people say that Canada and Russia want it, but I don't think that's the case at all. But so we're already too warm.
I agree. It's just that people get distracted into, saying, oh, we've got to take care of CO2 first. And that just delays everything else that we need to do that actually has a chance.
Can I just say, just a comment here, Lizzie, and Mike may well have a view here. Part of the problem that we have is that in AR6, they relied very heavily on this zero emissions commitment, ZEC thing that was developed from AR5, that essentially says that within a couple of decades of reaching net zero, the temperature would stop increasing. That's what it says, and that's what AR6 says. Now, of course, stopping it increasing is not the same as reducing. So it would stop wherever it gets to. So let's say it gets to 2 degrees. All right, so it doesn't go any higher than 2 degrees, but you've still got 2 degrees of warming. And as Hansen points out in this warming in the pipeline paper, which I was kind of lots of interesting details in there, which I'll come back to. But we're already at 400 parts per million. We are already above the level sufficient to deglaciate the Antarctic. That's a good one, isn't it? That's nice. So I mean, that's not going to happen tomorrow. But if we have any views about our role in the very long term, given that these things are not really reversible, it's something that's worthwhile considering. But Hansen's paper is very compelling. It's going to, I suspect it's going to get a lot of stick. I've spent a lot of time working on it, and I'm just finalizing a summary of it, which it is. I just want to caution one thing. He talks about this 10 degrees of warming, but we need to be very, very careful. This is not. He is not saying we're headed for 10 degrees of warming. He absolutely is not saying that. And he has said in a side note that is not what he's saying. What he's saying is that if atmospheric concentrations of greenhouse gases remained indefinitely at the level they currently are, that's what would eventually happen. But nobody expects the emissions to stay at the current level. They could actually carry on increasing. Or if policies are effective, they could start reducing. So he's merely doing a kind of a number crunching exercise here, and that's where the 10 degrees comes from. He's not saying that we're committed to that, and we need to be really careful about that, because otherwise we're laying ourselves open to a lot of criticism.
So this is an important topic, but I think we're rather than trying to craft the messaging right now.
You're right. Sorry.
So let's go to Aria, who's going to discuss our track 3 long-term strategy. And please continue to build your conversations in the chat. We'll be saving a copy of all of that. And we'll turn a lot of this messaging discussion over to the Climate Action Plan team. And please let me know if you're willing to sign on to that group. Aria?
Yes, thank you, Suzanne. Really appreciate that. And thank you so much, Paul, as well, for giving so much steam to all of this. Very, very happy that we started that conversation a little while back. And I see Paul put the hashtag Unify for Climate Action outline in the chat, which basically begins with track 1, track 2, and then moves into track 3. And I really love, Paul came up with the concept of, unify for climate action. Of course, climate unifies so many other issues out there, as we all know. And the more we can put emphasis on that unifying factor between various nonprofits, organizations, movement building that is already out there on the ground, connecting people's hearts to various issues when it comes to justice issues, environmental issues, conservation, biodiversity. The more we can speak with one voice about how climate can unify all of these issues, various countries, small island nations, the more effective I think that we will be. So I think that's a brilliant concept that, came from Paul, and we've all been discussing for some time. But the hashtag Unify for Climate Action campaign is very much about long-term progress on building a message that will really pull people together. So essentially, we've got track 1 in this, and I'm unable to pull it up on my own computer to share it on the screen. Paul, would you be able to share it on the screen if everyone wants to see that document? Should we go ahead and present the document as well?
You're muted, Paul.
It's good that I'm muted, right? Yeah, I can share the share screen to show the track 3 segment, right? That's what you want?
Okay. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Perfect. Thank you.
I think this is it. Let's see. Nope. Sorry. All right. Let me
Oops.
stop. I'll bring it up.
So many documents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many documents. It's so little time. 14th. Here we go. Okay, I got it. Let me just share a screen now.
Okay. Okay. Okay, great. So let me see here. So by July 31st, we're talking about putting together a short concept note with fundraising strategy, because of course, to really have an impact, having funds is extremely helpful. And including organizational management, staffing, governance, budget, and tracking and monitoring plan to be developed to present to funders. So that can tie in beautifully. I appreciate there's already efforts going out there in terms of funding the movement. We've also been pulling in some people who have more levels of expertise when it comes to finance, and who are working in the SDG space to finance climate action. So, this whole concept here is also being supported by outreach strategies and, making some key connections outside of our organization to amplify our effectiveness. Could you do me a favor, Paul, and just make that a little bigger for my tired eyes?
Yeah, I can figure that out.
Thank you so much. Okay,
better?
that's so much
I can-
better. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so key partnerships and collaborations will be established to amplify impact across multiple communication and advocacy priorities. So this is, once again, everybody here, we've been working in this space, so I'm sure we have other, whether it's nonprofit organizations or connections amongst governmental groups This is where we are going to really be wanting to reach out to everyone here and pulling in those key voices to amplify our message. And it includes the creation of various communication assets and press releases, short videos, the same thing that Paul started talking about in the very beginning, and social media tools. So I brought Jessica from Redwood Climate Communications, made some introductions, and she has been hugely supportive and had some wonderful ideas in terms of actually issuing, I can't see the document anymore, Paul, just so you know.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So, but she is talking about setting up media interviews, for instance, and that we'd be establishing a pool of people that we can be pulling from for those interviews. And then I also have a connection at 32nd Street Media, and he has indicated a huge desire to help us with messaging and creating some video content explainers that will really help us to communicate in a short way the impact of all of the issues that all of the scientists in this group are bringing up. You know, how is it that we do really let people know that just greenhouse gas emission reduction alone is not going to take us far enough? It's not a sound and secure enough strategy when it comes to the kind of earth that we're bequeathing to our children, our grandchildren, all of that. So the more we connect the heart and the mind in these messages, the more impact we'll have. That was something I believe Rebecca brought up on a previous meeting, and I cannot agree more with you. So all of the members here, we will want your help as we move into this stage as well, in terms of getting the word out for Unify, hashtag Unify for climate action. We'll be developing social media strategy around all of that with the experts that we have, and really hoping that everyone here can help us amplify the message through their networks, especially with such a broad message about how this is something that we can all come together for, to amplify multiple causes. So we've got some ideas here. Open Society Foundation to find funding. So the more people here can help us with funding, as well as amplifying the message through like-minded organizations. Open Society Foundation, Children's Investment Fund Foundation, Climate Emergency Fund, or just some initial ideas in terms of getting funding for this messaging strategy. So on that, this is to be further developed as we continue, but it will all be to support these recommendations that are beginning with the Overshoot Commission moving into COP, and then supporting it amongst the wider audience. So any questions? Anyone want to volunteer anything around that in terms of supporting that next stage of the campaign? Yes, Barbara.
How are you going to raise funds if you're not a legal entity?
Well, we're going to be figuring all of that out as we continue in terms of what kind of entity we will be, what is the best entity to be in order to collect funds, and whether we actually end up going through another organization in terms of raising funds that are all gathered for this particular purpose. So those are all excellent questions we will be addressing as we move forward.
In the past, we've provided fiscal sponsorship.
Wonderful. Appreciate that, Brian.
Yeah, if I could just say, I mean, I think we want to be open to fiscal sponsorship agreements, partnerships where multiple entities could receive funds. We don't you know, we don't have that figured out yet, obviously, but we're open.
I did send an email offering to write your application form to social and environmental entrepreneurs. It's been just over 2 years since Mia became fiscal sponsor. We are doing so well. We have raised funds. We have a generous benefactor who is giving us $100,000 to help with the project. But we also do have Yay Tao working full-time unpaid, you know, to help spread the message for Mia. But it's been great. Speaking personally, I would never become deputy director if I didn't have the support services of social and environmental entrepreneurs. And at 6.5% of your incoming donations, it is a great deal. You won't find better value for money. They handle everything in the back office so you can concentrate on the mission.
So just to clarify that, am I understanding you correctly? You're saying that MIR is also offering fiscal sponsorship and that's a
No.
6.5% or?
No, social and environmental entrepreneurs is our fiscal sponsor. You can
Oh.
apply. I am willing to write your application form, or you can do it. It is easy peasy. And they will, if you put them on the fast track, you could be a fiscally sponsored 501c3 organization in about 6 weeks to a month. And then you can start raising money, and they will do all the back office functions for 6.5% of incoming donations. You could start fundraising as soon as you become an NGO, 501c3. They take care of all the taxes, they do all the accounting. If you have people on payroll, they will pay them. I think it's been great, and it costs $100 to apply. That is the only upfront fee. So we were poor as church mice, and we managed to do it. And now we have a generous funder, and we're bringing in maybe $50,000 a year from grassroots sponsorship.
That's wonderful. And I see Leslie has written these things in the chat. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Leslie. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
I think we have time for
suggestions,
maybe one more comment or question for Aria before we wrap up. Anything else for Aria or for Suzanne or for Paul? I want to thank all three of you. Great job. A really important conversation today with lots to think about and, more importantly, lots to act on. As we wrap up, I just want to make 2 comments. First, to announce that our speaker next meeting, which is 2 weeks from today, will be Oliver Morton, who is, I think many of you may know, the author of an extraordinary book. It's some years old now on geoengineering, a brilliant writer, but equally importantly, he's been a journalist and a writer for any number of publications, and he's been involved in this field for many, many years. So I think he can both give us some real semi-insider insights into the state of play, and also maybe help us with some tips for reaching out to the media, et cetera. So don't miss that one. And then in July 13th, we have Phoebe Bernard, who is head of the Stable Climate Alliance and is an environmentalist, worked in Africa for many years, has close ties with young people and so forth. Also an extraordinary guest. I think both of those sessions will be really fruitful and nourishing, both intellectually, but also will help advance our goals and our objectives. And the last thing I wanted to say, is not to be a downer, but it seems to me that the one thing that really didn't come up today and has come up periodically in the past that I think is absolutely essential that we need to focus on is outreach to our opponents. And you know, if we keep talking to ourselves for another year, we could have all the fundraising and all them going to COP and whatever. And some of that outreach may be private over coffee or a Zoom meeting with 2 or 3 people, or at some of the, you know, at a full meeting that we have. But I would hope that we build in to our planning and our advocacy and get your support. It's not that we haven't wanted to, it's not that we've been resistant to it. It's been who and how and whatever. But I think until we break out of our circle, as broad as it is geographically and And in terms of the various skills that people bring, I think we're going to continue to be limited. I found in my sort of Twitter probes, including as recently as a couple hours ago, that compared to a year and a half ago, there's absolutely no more open-mindedness to geoengineering, I find, than there has been among the opponents. So there's still a lot of work to do, and we need to make sure, at least that's what I would advocate, that that component of our work takes a top, if not the top priority. Robert?
Look, just those coming talks sound great. Oliver Morton's awesome. I tried to reach out to Johan Rockstrom at the Potsdam Institute to participate in a debate with David Keith about tipping points, as David had offered, and Brian was also going to join in that. I haven't had any response from Rockstrom, which I was disappointed by, so finding we do have that offer on the table from David Keith of a dialogue about especially tipping points and the other issues that he raised in his HPAC address.
Yeah, and I think that would be a really smashing session when we get those sort of two sides together. Maybe, we'll talk offline, but maybe we can reach out to Tim Lenton or some of his co-authors on papers he's written along with Johan, to see whether someone, who's a first-rate caliber and I think it's daunting for probably anybody to go up against David Keith. So we want the right person. Any last comments? We've got another minute or two before we close for today.
I'd just like to defer to Paul, who's really been, and thank him again. He's been leading the charge. Thank you, Aria, for bringing him into our sphere and leading the work that we've done together. So, Paul, how about a few last comments?
I'm just grateful for this opportunity. I had a play date with my 11-month-old granddaughter this morning, and I think about her at 80 and 2100, and I was thinking of all of you, and thinking how important it is of the work that we're doing, and that we can win this. It's an uphill battle, right? We're trying to change the whole way of the climate response, and rethinking it. And it seems impossible, right? And as Nelson Mandela said, it seems impossible until you win. So I think we're on the cusp of something, and I think we have to keep hammering. And I think we do need to clarify a voice that is going to be confrontational and challenging. And I think we can win. It might not happen this year, it might not happen next year, but it will happen. We just don't know when. So we live into that magical possibility. That's how I thrive. Yeah.
With those stirring notes, and with the image of your 11-month granddaughter, in all of our minds, if that's not motivation to move forward, I don't know what is. Those are on the steering circle. If you'd like to remain for a few minutes as we debrief, thanks to everybody else, and we'll see you soon, and hopefully in 2 weeks. Thanks again, everybody.
All right.